What's up, you guys? Teller checking in for week 8 of this season's Dana White's Contender series. We're winding down from a long weekend over here. Everything is great. I hope all you guys are doing well out there yourselves, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I love me some Dana White's Contender series action, so you guys know I'm excited to hop on the mic and take a look at the future of the sport here. This is a solid card, if you ask me. There's a couple fighters that stand out to me. First and foremost, Torrez Finney fighting for the third time on the show. He's still undefeated. A lot of people gave him a hard time after his last performance. I was kind of on the other side of the fence. I wasn't super impressed, but I wasn't in agreement with some of the stuff that Dana White said after the fight that, he has no chance to cut it in the UFC. I actually think you could throw him into the UFC and he could have success against certain opponents. The grappling, the pace that he pushes with the wrestling could really give some guys trouble. I understand he's not the most well-rounded fighter, but I'm excited to see him get another opportunity here, and I hope he gets the contract. Now, both fighters in the main event do stand out to me as well. I think that both of them have some real potential. Diyar, Nurgozhay taking on Bartosz, Szewczyk. You got the Kazaki fighter taking on the Polish fighter, and both fighters have some potential, like I said. Especially when you take into consideration the light heavyweight division's not the most talent rich. So if one of these fighters can get a contract, you could potentially see them making some noise in that division relatively soon. And then another fighter that I want to highlight before we jump into the card is Jacobe Smith, who will be kicking the card off. Jacobe Smith is a fighter that has some solid wrestling experience. He was an Oklahoma State wrestler. He was a teammate and still kind of a teammate over in the MMA side of things as well, of Nick Pinchinini, who just fought on Dana White's Contender Series this season, somehow snuck off a victory. I think we all kind of were in agreement that he lost that fight, including the boss, Big D, Uncle Dana, and they are putting that fight together again on the season. So we'll see if Jacobe Smith can have more success than Pinchinini had in his fight on the season here. So those are some fighters that I want to highlight. Now we will jump right into the first fight. We'll work our way up towards the top of this card. If you're new here to the channel, please subscribe. You guys catch me in all my social media, man. I'm on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _. I just put out some mean memes after UFC Paris. I think they were pretty funny. You guys let me know. Go comment on those. Follow me on Twitter at the MMA Teller. And I'm also on TikTok. I'm starting to get the TikTok going. I got a Facebook. You guys can find me anywhere on social media. Okay, guys? So appreciate you guys very much. And the last thing, we are powered by BetUS. If you guys are looking to join a new sportsbook, shoot me a message, shoot me an email, DM me on Instagram or Twitter, and let me know, because I will send you over a link where you will get a 150% match on your first 3 deposits. That's a special offer with the beginning of the NFL season kicking off and whatnot. So don't hesitate. Reach out to me. I think you guys will really like the bonuses that you will get there. All right, guys, let's go jump into the first fight.
The Teller.
Kicking the night off, we head over to the welterweight division, where we have the Canadian Christien Savoie taking on the highly touted prospect in Jacobe Smith. We did highlight Jacobe Smith a little bit in the intro. He has that Oklahoma State wrestling background, which, of course, when you have that type of collegiate wrestling background coming into the sport of MMA, you have a major leg up in the game. Now, if I want to say something in a little bit of a negative light before we dive into some of the promising signs that he shows, I don't know how good of a thing it is for him to be shoulder to shoulder with Kyle Kruchmer and Nick Pinchinini here. And I'm being a little critical, but I was not impressed with what I saw from Nick Pinchinini being in the same opportunity and same situation that Jacobe Smith is here, fighting on Dana White's Contender Series. I thought that we didn't really see Nick Pinchinini show any type of development with his striking. We understand he could wrestle, but he also struggled with his wrestling in his fight. Okay. Now, I don't necessarily expect that to be the case. I think that Jacobe Smith is going to really thrive with his wrestling in this matchup, because when I'm breaking down tape on Christien Savoie, I've seen him struggle with his takedown defense at times. And I think Jacobe Smith is a whole nother step up from some of the competition that he was facing over there in Canada. Now, Savoie is a little bit more of the naturally larger fighter. We've seen him fighting up in the middleweight division. That's something that could be good for him there if he could use his size and maybe show some growth with his takedown defense. That could be something that works for him there, but I just don't see it. I think that he's going to struggle. I think he's going to get taken down, and that's going to be the difference in the fight. If somehow he can keep this fight standing, I would say he has the more promising striking. Now, Jacobe Smith shows flashes with his knockout power. He's really more of a one-shot type of striker. Looks to land these big uppercuts and step-in hooks, jump-in hooks and whatnot. I don't really see him stringing off combinations. And I think that Christien Savoie can put more combinations together. If he doesn't get hit with the big shot that hurts him, maybe he wins those type of exchanges. But all in all, let's cut to the chase here. I think that Jacobe Smith's wrestling is just going to be too much. I want to be clear there. I think this wrestling is going to be too much. I think he's going to get Savoie down to the mat. We've seen Savoie struggle a little bit in the early portion of his professional career already. Now, his one loss was against Basil Hafez, who is a high-caliber fighter, right? He's a high-caliber fighter already fighting in the octagon, and we know he has a high-caliber grappling. He was able to pull off a choke in the first round. Maybe we could see Jacobe Smith start to show some development with his jiu-jitsu, not just the wrestling, but try to string in some jiu-jitsu and get a finish down there. Now, the Dorjan Dokaj fight, excuse me on the pronunciation, but that was a fight that I do know that people had him losing. A lot of people were saying that he lost that fight. And that's something to keep an eye on. It did go to a draw, but that potentially was another loss. Since then, he's on a 2-fight winning streak. Not necessarily impressed with the level of competition, but I'm not necessarily impressed with the level of competition for Jacobe Smith as well. All right, so I will just reiterate, the wrestling will be the difference in this fight. If Jacobe Smith shows low-level fight IQ and goes out there and tries to put on a show, that's where he can get in trouble. And we know that this show does kind of push those types of avenues for fighters where they think they really got to go out there and impress to a whole nother level, and they can get put in a tough situation. That's the only way I see him losing this fight. So I think he dominates with the wrestling. I'm gonna say it's a more of a unanimous decision, domination with the wrestling. I'm not sure if Jacobe Smith's gonna get a Savoie out of there. Smith at this point still doesn't have one submission on his resume. And Savoie is a fighter that still has never been knocked out. So he seems to be pretty durable there. I kind of feel this is going to be a dominant decision victory for Jacobe Smith. Now, am I pressing any of you guys to touch this minus 500 line? I'm going to say no. And maybe that has something to do with what happened in the main event of last weekend's Dana White's Contender Series, or last Tuesday's Dana White's Contender Series card, where Schoenfelder chose to make a horrible decision to stand and trade with a fighter that had the striking advantage, right? He could have used the wrestling and dominated that fight, but he sit there and he froze up. And if Jacobe Smith were to not even necessarily freeze up, but just entertain the striking scenarios, looking to land his own damage there and try to kind of show off because he's had some limited success there, he could end up getting caught in a situation where he is not a minus 500 and the fight is going to play out much closer. So maybe I'm a little bit gun shy right now to touch these types of lines on Dana White's Contender Series, but no, I don't see the value there. I think the value's on the underdog. If Christien Savoie can keep this fight standing, he will potentially be live. But I want to be clear. I think Jacobe Smith will have success with the wrestling and will win a unanimous decision. He's back. Torrez, Finney, getting the third opportunity on the show to get the contract. He just fought earlier on this season, so he takes this fight on short notice, and now he's taking on Abdellah Er-Ramy, fighting out of Spain. Now, listen, as I said in the intro, I just wasn't necessarily in agreement with what a lot of people were saying about Torrez Finney. And one thing I didn't really bring up that I want to talk about is what Dana White said in the press conference after that episode, or in the interview of that show, where he was saying that Torrez Finney should be more active and he's not really looking for fights like he should. I mean, take a look at this. By the time he takes this fight, after this fight said and done, he would have fought 6 times in under a year and a half. Since the first time that he fought in Dana White's Contender Series against Yuri Panfarov, who's not a bad fighter, and he went out there and he got the rear naked choke submission. Okay, since that fight, after this fight's done, he would have fought 4 times in 11 months. So, I mean, what are we talking about here as far as him not being active enough? I mean, 4 times in 11 months, that's a pretty active fighter if you ask me. I wasn't in agreement with just everyone's take on this dude. I mean, not every fighter is going to be that flashy type of striker, man. Some of these guys are going to have different tactics to win fights. And I think that Torrez Finney actually brings kind of an intriguing type of fighting style to the cage, especially with his build, man. He's so short and he's just built so wide. He's built like a short Hulk. And I like his style. It's kind of intriguing to me. Maybe I'm a little bit more high in it because I've had money on him and he's came through for me. But I love to see him just using his pure strength to lift these guys up and dump them down. He's not even the most technical wrestler, and he still gets away with it because he's so freakishly strong. And I think that he has potential to grow as a fighter. I don't ever think that he's going to be a silky smooth striker, but I do believe his striking can come around. But most importantly, I think he could use his grappling to dominate fights against specific type of fighters, and styles make fights, and there'll be some interesting matchups for him in the UFC. And I do think that we'll also see him get knocked out quite a bit because he is lacking defensively with his striking. He is there to be hit, and the right kind of matchup, a fighter's going to make him work so much for those takedowns, and they're going to stuff him, and he's going to be exhausted, and they are going to knock him out. And that's fun to watch, though. Okay, and then in some other fights, he's going to lift dudes up over his shoulders, he's going to slam them down, he's going to look to drown them. And I hope he gets the contract. I hope he goes out there and gets the victory. If he goes out there and gets a W, he'll be 3-0 on the show. He's undefeated. And I'll tell you what, I think that he's going to go out there and do that because Abdellah Er-Ramy, I've seen him struggle a little bit with his takedown defense, fighting outside the UFC, leading up to this opportunity. And I think that Torrez Finney is a fighter that can definitely replicate some of those situations where I've seen him put on his back. Now, I will also say this, in some of those fights, even where he was taken down, he did work his way back up to his feet and eventually even got knockouts with his striking. But Torrez Finney is shown to be kind of durable, if you ask me. I know he was wobbled a little bit, hurt a little bit on the feet in his last fight. And even in the first fight, too, he was a little bit on shaky legs. I don't know if shaky legs are the right word, but he was getting touched up a little bit as he was diving in for those takedowns. And there is that type of potential. And there is a realistic possibility that Abdellah Er-Ramy can work his way back up to his feet or make him pay on the feet before he gets taken down. But I'm going to say that Torrez Finney's just relentless with the pace and the grappling. Once again, I think that he'll even be more prepared for this fight than ever because he just fought. I'm sure he went right back to the gym. Now this is 3 fights on the show that he's going to have. So he's going to feel right at home here. And I think that he's going to drown Abdellah Er-Ramy, and maybe he even finds a sub in this fight. You take a look at the one loss that Abdellah Er-Ramy had. It was actually a knockout loss that he had a while ago. That was in the first round. I don't see Torrez Finney landing something like that in the feet. It's possible. Small gloves. It's a fight game. I mean, Finney's a powerful dude, but the technique's not really there. If we see a finish via strikes, it would obviously, in my opinion, it would be via ground and pound. And I would love to see that. If Torrez Finney can get a takedown and really open up down there, that would be great. Also, take note, Torrez Finney is still just 25 years old. A lot of growth for this young fighter. And I hope he goes out there and gets the job done. Let's take a look at the betting line. Over on BetUS, Torrez Finney is a -230. Okay, so, listen, we got to kind of dissect these lines, right? Because, I'm on the favorite here. There's no way I was going against my boy Torrez Finney first and foremost because I want to see him win this fight. But -230, I would say that, if I want to give you more of my professional insight and how we're analyzing this betting line, this is not where you really want to be on Finney, in my opinion. You don't, because if he struggles to get the takedown, he's going to be in trouble. And it just realistically, the value is on the underdog in here. And I think that Abdellah has shown some good things. All in all, I think that Torrez Finney will use that grappling to have success and get the job done. But I would like him more right around a -190 to 180. I have him capped more around that range. So I don't see the value there. Okay. So I want to be clear. I don't see the betting value on him, but I do see him winning the fight. Values is on the dog here, though, but I'm backing my boy Finney. So this one right here, I would say is the most closely matched fight on the card, and the betting line reflects that. I would say this is my most anticipated fight of the card when you break down tape on both these fighters. They're both very exciting to watch. I think this is going to be a thrilling fight. I really do. I've been very torn on who I want to select here. I have settled in with the pick. I've been back and forth. I'll let you guys know that right now. So David Martinez, the Black Spartan, taking on Mr. Benjamin Xavier Franklin. I've been pleased with what I've seen from them as far as the regional tape. Both these fighters, champions on the regional scene. Xavier Franklin, the PFC champion. Looks like he's got some double champ stuff going on over here. Looking up to the Black Mamba here, trying to do a similar type of pose. I like the energy he brings. When you take a look at his IG, this is a fighter that really oozes confidence. He has high expectations from himself, and that is a very good thing. This is a fighter that's pretty well-rounded, if you ask me. He's explosive with the striking. He's not the most polished with the striking overall as far as stringing off combinations, but he's a pretty dangerous striker. He has good pop in his hands, and it's starting to come together. He's not a stranger to going down to the mat. He has some wrestling and grappling abilities there, too. I believe he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. As far as the grappling goes, like if we were to see a fighter have success in this fight from being in top position or hurting the other fighter and getting on top of them and being just a little bit more sturdy down the mat, I would probably say it's going to be Xavier Franklin. But I don't really see that being the case. I think this is going to be the type of fight where they're really trading on the feet, and both of them are showcasing their kickboxing skills, which, when it comes to that, I've been very pleased with what I've seen from David Martinez. This is a fighter that has a better kicking game than Xavier Franklin, but he could also hurt you with his hands. Not the most technical there as well, but he has good pop and some good sting on his hands. But, they do kind of come from his hip and a little bit from east and west, but they're quick and he's accurate. He's landing on dudes' chins. He's knocking them out with his hands too, but his kicking game is nasty. And we've seen him not only put the volume on his opposition with the kicks, just brutalizing them there, but even land devastating finishes. When you pull up his highlight reel, one knockout that's going to stand out to you was that spinning heel kick. It was super accurate, placed perfectly, and he seems to be very comfortable there. So I've really liked what I've seen from him. And you also note, out of his 10 victories, 8 of them have come by way of knockout. Man. So he's going out there and he's finding the finish. I think that there is a realistic possibility he could be the first fighter to ever get a finish over Xavier Franklin. I just think that these fighters are going to trade. And I also want to say this. There is a possibility that Xavier Franklin's the first fighter to ever get a knockout on David Martinez as well, because this is a fight where I think there's going to be a pretty high pace and they're going to be trading and both of them are dangerous. So somebody may get knocked out in this fight. I'm kind of leaning towards like the under, or this fight not going the distance. I think somebody is going to have success landing a big shot. Okay, 15 minutes of these dudes trading with the high pace. Now, what pushes me towards David Martinez, which I ended up switching my pick here. I initially was on Xavier Franklin. I think that he's very live to get the job done here. And then when I was taking into consideration the fact that he's an underdog, I wanted to give you guys an underdog pick. I was very close to pulling the trigger on that Xavier Franklin play because he is live to win this fight. But what really made me just settle in on the Martinez pick is the fact that if somebody doesn't get that knockout, okay, and I think the knockout can come from either man almost evenly, but if either man doesn't get that knockout, I think that David Martinez is going to have the edge as far as the volume goes. He's a more aggressive fighter. When you watch his tape, he's a fighter that's usually advancing and putting a lot of volume, whereas Xavier Franklin, he doesn't mind circling the cage and looking for these counter strikes, and if he doesn't find that big counter shot to shake things up, I just think that David Martinez is the fighter that's most likely going to win a decision there too. And that has led me to the David Martinez pick. And it does say that he's 5'5", and Xavier Franklin's 5'6". That was a little intriguing to me because Franklin does look small in the cage, but I know he was in there with some big dudes. But I really want to see both these fighters at the face-offs. But let's go over to the betting line. David Martinez is a -165. I'm feeling that this is the card. This is the type of card where the value is on the underdog straight across the board. Just about. We'll talk about the other two fights, but if you were to bet every underdog, I have a feeling that you probably would profit on the night. I think there's going to be some underdogs hitting here or there, and this is another fight where the underdog is live. I think the line should be closer. I like what I'm seeing from David Martinez, and I think both these fighters have a lot of potential. But I will lean towards David Martinez, but maybe I have him capped more like a -135, 140 there. And another thing I just want to note too is even though David Martinez is 10-1 with the 11 professional victories, while Xavier Franklin's just 5-0, and some of you guys may be thinking that this is a little bit of a step up for Xavier Franklin. He doesn't have as much experience with David Martinez having a good amount of experience over in Combate. Do note that Franklin has his fair share of amateur bouts too. If you add up his amateur fights, depending on how you want to look at those, he almost has basically the same amount of fights. Okay, so just take note of that. But value on the dog, I guess I would say, man, but I like what I see from David Martinez. You guys, I'm sorry, man. I'm trying to give you a solid answer here. This is just a great fight. This is a fight that I'm going to be tuned in to as a fan, and I think both these fighters have a bright future in front of them. But give me David Martinez to win the fight. Over to the featherweight division. I'll say this comes to mind as I look at this fight. I'm kind of curious what the UFC's mindset is when it comes to the placement of these fights on these Dana White's Contender Series fight cards. Of course, the main event is the most highlighted bout. Of course, the most highlighted fighters are fighting in the main event. That's been the case, right? But other than that, the spots 1, 2, 3, and 4, when it comes to these fight cards, they're all over the place. As far as I'm concerned, we got Alberto Montes taking on Carlos Calderon. I would say this is the least most anticipated fight on the night. I would say these fighters probably have the least amount of potential. Maybe I'm being a little harsh on them. Now, I will say this much. there is potential that this fight will deliver from an entertainment standpoint. I mean, these guys bring it, and we may see a finish. We may see some wild stuff, but I'm not high on what I've seen from Carlos Calderon. He's taken this fight on short notice. Alberto Montes was supposed to be taking on Nick Ring, right? Nick Ring. Hope I'm not mixing. No, was it Robbie Ring? Excuse me. Thinking of the old Nick Ring, if you remember him from The Ultimate Fighter. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember Nick Ring, but he was supposed to be taking a Robbie Ring, I believe, who fought on Dana White's Contender Series and has already taken an L there. Okay, now Alberto Montes does show to have more potential here. I'm somewhat familiar with him. He's from the Titan FC scene, and he's a fighter that has trained with MMA Masters. He's had Danny Chavez in his corner going into some of his fights. You guys know we've interviewed Danny Chavez, and I think that MMA Masters is an underrated gym. They got some good stuff going on down there. I'm not sure if he's training with them leading up to this fight. I know he has trained with different gyms before, but he's a well-rounded fighter. We've seen him go out there and display his grappling and his submission skills. He's gone out there and got some early subs. He's a good striker. On the other hand, Carlos Calderon, he's a fighter that, you could say he has some grappling skills there as well. I mean, he's a dangerous, he can be dangerous with his sub threat, but he's also shown to be very vulnerable down in the mat as well. I saw him get subbed in a fight that just looked to be very low level. And when you think of that fight, I'll pull it up real quick. The fight that Carlos Calderon had against Montes Ascar. That was a fight. It kind of screamed to me that it was a low level fight. And that fight was just 2 years ago. I mean, he obviously could have grown from that fight, but that was a fight where, as soon as the bell rung, I'm watching the tape and I'm like, these guys aren't on the same level as what I've seen from Alberto Montes when he's looking good. Now, this is the thing though, when it comes to Alberto Montes, 9-1, nice little resume there, but look at that one loss that he took. He took a knockout there against a fighter that doesn't look to be anything that promising. Okay, the 3-3 era Lukowski, the American thoroughbred. Now he looks the part when you're looking at the picture there with the hat and the muscles and all that, but 3-3 as a pro, and that was a fight where he was knocked out. So you got to worry about that. But at the same time, do you really have to worry about it? Because Carlos Calderon is a fighter that has only had two knockouts. Excuse me here, yeah, only 2 knockouts. Out of all 6 of his victories, hasn't really shown to be that much of a threat there. And I'm just not banking on him to go out there and get that knockout. I think it's more realistic that we're going to see Alberto Montes go out here and get a submission victory. Okay, that's where I'm going with this. I won't be too long-winded with this fight. Like I said, it's kind of my least anticipated fight of the card. I think that Alberto Montes will show to be a step above, and I think he gets a submission here. But this could be a fight that you see a high pace and some craziness going on. And if Alberto were to just be very irresponsible in there, maybe something crazy could happen. He can get hit with a shot on the chin, but all in all, he should be on another level. I have Alberto Montes getting a first or second round submission. He's a -350 right now on BetUS. I think that line's quite accurate. I know he's another big favorite, but this is a line that I actually do think is quite accurate. I think he's the better fighter here, and I could see him touching -400 to -450. We'll see. I don't know if we're doing some pretty good views on our Dana White's Contender Series prediction videos, these videos here. So I don't know. Some maybe I'm moving some of the lines. Some of the fights that we've talked about, man, we've seen the lines trend and what we're talking about here. Let's see if we see Alberto Montes kind of get smashed and he maybe even creeps up to like a 480, 500. I'd be intrigued to see that. He seems to be the superior fighter here, in my opinion. I don't think that Calderon is almost deserving the fight on the show. It's kind of, I hope we don't see this show kind of get watered down and we see fighters that are really not that promising fighting on the show. Maybe they need to skip a week here and there, which I don't want to see that, but maybe we got to tone down the amount of fights that's going on and keep it to more high level prospects. But maybe he'll prove me wrong. That's what this show's all about. And that would be cool for him if he could prove all the doubters wrong. And maybe Carlos Calderon lives up to be something that we didn't think he could be, but I don't know about that. And that takes us to the main event, which is taking place in the light heavyweight division. Diyar Nurgozhay taking on Bartosz Szewczyk. Like I said in the intro of this video, I think that these fighters right here probably have the most potential out of the entire card, especially when you take into consideration they're fighting in the light heavyweight division. I think it's more realistic. We see one of these fighters get a contract, work their way into the UFC, and potentially break into the top 15. I'm not saying that's like an extremely likely scenario, but out of all the fighters in the card, they're the most likely fighters to do something like that, I would say. Diyar Nurgozhay, I like the fact that he's been getting in work over at Team Killcliff FC. You guys know I'm very high in that gym. I know he's getting in a lot of work with Henry Hooft because he's constantly taking pictures with him. after their training and whatnot. And Henry Hooft, a legendary striker in his own right, one of the top MMA coaches in the game right now. That's obviously going to translate very well into Nurgozhay's overall game. Right now, we don't have an age on him listed here, but I was just watching some film on him that took place about 2 years ago, and they had him listed at 22. So I think he's right around 24 years old. He's still very young. There's a lot of room for growth in his game. He's 9-0. He's undefeated. He's not the most ripped fighter. When you're breaking tape down on him, you notice this isn't a guy that's like super physically imposing. He has a little bit of pudge to him. But I don't know. I don't think that he's that undersized. I think that he can still fill into this division. Like I said, he's young. I think he can maybe trim up a little bit and still hang around in this division. On the other hand, the Polish fighter, Bartosz, this is a dude that he's going to have a 2-inch height advantage. He's going to have a reach advantage in this fight. I think that he will be, in fact, the fighter that has a larger frame for the division. As you see here, he's training with Szewczyk, UFC fighter, Michał Szewczyk. They're training together nonstop. These guys are very close. They have a lot of pictures together in IG. I mean, Szewczyk is a guy that knows his way around the octagon, so that's a good fighter to learn from. It's interesting when you take into consideration Szewczyk used to fight in the light heavyweight division. Now he's in the middleweight division, but look at the size difference here. It's kind of crazy. Szewczyk has had his performances in the UFC, but he's definitely had fights where he's fell flat in his face. I mean, he's had a lot of downs as well, but not a bad fighter. Maybe I don't know if he's a fighter that sticks out to me that you want to be shoulder to shoulder with, the most in the UFC. I don't know. Maybe we'll see if we see some flakiness from Bartosz here as well. But if you want to say something good for Bartosz here that he has going for him is his striking. I think that his boxing is pretty technically sound. If he works off the jab and he uses his range, he can have success on the feet. But I'll tell you what, I see a lot of people saying that Nurgozhay, his striking is not on the same level as Bartosz, and I'm not in agreement. Diyar, Nurgozhay is a fighter that fights out of the southpaw stance, and with the threat that he has, with his grappling, he can change levels. It kind of gives fighters something they got to worry about, and he does have success with his striking. It's not the most flashy and quick twitched, but he moves pretty well there, man. He'll work the leg kicks in, and I think he's the more well-rounded fighter here. Okay, so if we're going to see a fighter have success down in the mat, I do believe it's going to be Nurgozhay. And besides that, I think that Nurgozhay can more than hold his own on the feet as well. Bartosz, he is 8-2-1 as a pro. He is a fighter that's been subbed. I think you got to keep an eye for that if the fight, because I can see this fight going down to the mat, and if he shows to be a fish out of water down there, that could be a potential problem. Got caught in a rear naked choke back in 2021. Since then, though, he's been looking pretty good. In his last fight, you could pull up the entire fight there against Marcin Lazars. That was a fight where he got a finish with just 1 second left on the clock. He hit him with a body kick, kind of pointed the toes right into the midsection, got that finish there. But that strike can potentially hurt anybody, but I don't know if that's the type of strike that's going to finish Diyar Nurgozhay. I think this dude's looking pretty good. Representing Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, they're doing putting in some work, man. They're starting to get some of these fighters that are rising towards the top. Of course, led by Shavkat Rakhmonov. But when you think of like the Dagestani fighters, that's obviously on a whole nother level. But you got the Georgian fighters making noise. Low key, you're seeing the Kazakhstan fighters starting to have success in the UFC. They're tough dudes. And this is a fighter that has 5 knockout victories. He has 2 subs. He's getting finishes for the most part. He's been fighting over at UAE Warriors, fighting under the Eagle FC banner early on as well. That's Khabib's promotion. So he's had some pretty solid performances. The Magomedov fight, that was a fight that he dominated on the feet and down in the mat. Looked very good there against a somewhat respectable opponent. In his last fight, he had a first-round knockout. He's starting to put it together, like I said, training with Henry Hooft. I'm on Nurgozhay here. I think he's the more well-rounded fighter, and I like him in the main event spot here. Now, we take a look at the betting lines. It's pretty interesting. Now, BetUS has him at a -140. That's where he opened, and that's where it is at as I'm recording this Sunday night. But there are some other sports books where I've seen his line be much higher. I think he even touched like -180, and then it's dipped on those sports books back down to -140 as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. We've seen some recent action on the Polish fighter here. That kind of had me intrigued a little bit, because the more I'm turning over stones and whatnot, I'm liking what I'm seeing from Diyar Nurgozhay, and I thought maybe we'd see his line start to get steamed up a little bit. So we keep an eye on the line movement there, but I like Nurgozhay to win the fight, and I'm going to say that he could potentially get a finish here maybe down on the mat, having some success there, or he could potentially land a big shot in the feet as well. Now he could also be tagged with the big shot. We can see a knockout either way, right? This is a light heavyweight division. There's potential for either fighter to land a big shot and shake things up. But I just think that Nurgozhay will be the more measured fighter and could set up a finish one way or another more realistically. Maybe he wins a decision as well, but these dudes, two big boys, maybe we see a finish. I do like the Kazakhstan fighter here, though, or Nurgozhay. I will take him to win the fight. And that line is obviously, it's reachable. This is a very close line right now as we're recording this, and I think that line is very accurate, okay, at the very least. If not, I think he should even be more of a favorite. So I like him to win the fight. All right, guys, that's going to wrap this episode up. Like I said, go follow me on IG and Twitter. I got the memes coming, especially on IG, man. I got some good ones. Go tell me what you guys think about what I've been putting out there. And I really appreciate you guys. Don't forget, we will have official action for this card. We will have official action for every single DWCS card, every UFC event, and of course, scattered MMA events, over with the PFL and whatnot. So if you want to work with me, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'll give you further information there. I appreciate you guys so much. Please smash that like button on your way out. Really means a lot to me, guys. And you guys all have a great week. And we will be talking very soon. UFC Paris is about to be up in the channel as well. Thank you, guys. Signing out. Teller.
The teller.